गांव का रास्ता शहर तक जाता है, पर हर शहर का रास्ता गांव तक नहीं लौटता। और इसीलिए मैं अपने गांव लौटी हूँ, ताकि मैं अपने गांव और आसपास के सभी गांव जहाँ पर अस्पताल नहीं है, डॉक्टर्स नहीं हैं, उन सब तक पहुँच सकूँ, एक एक तक पहुँचकर उनके आंसू पोंछ सकूँ।
हिम्मत ही वो ताकत है जिसके सहारे इंसान समंदर की हर विपरीत लहर को बिना झुके पार कर सकता है।
सिर्फ उसकी हड्डियां जोड़ना ही मेरा काम नहीं, उसकी हिम्मत जोड़ना भी मेरा काम।
डॉक्टरनी नेता बनने चली है।
डॉक्टर स्नेहा के सामने रोज एक नई चुनौती है, हर क्षण एक संघर्ष है।
स्नेहा माथुर है ना, उन्हें तबाह करना है।
मैं इस देश का चेहरा बदल दूंगी।
Welcome all of you. This is a very special webinar, and I want to tell you why it's special. It's special because all our friends and partners and who've now become colleagues from season 1 more than 6 years ago have joined us in the seminar, and there are lots of fellow travelers who have watched the journey and who've been part of the journey in many ways of मैं कुछ भी कर सकती हूँ. I, a woman, can achieve anything. I will try and say the English name, but I will stick to for मैं कुछ भी कर सकती हूँ. Our friend Srilata gave us a name Makbaksh, so I'm going to stick to that because it's shorter. And the second reason this is very special is that we have a special approach this time in season 3 for sharing the outcome of the program, which is season 3. So before I begin, as we go along welcoming everybody who comes and joins us today, I want to just share a few aspects of मैं कुछ भी कर सकती हूँ with all of you. 183 episodes, and Dr. Sneha, Sneha Mathur, who is the protagonist of Makbaksh, has enabled so many women to stand up to their families, societies, fighting social norms which are rigorous. Each one of them, in their own way, has become a hero or heroine of मैं कुछ भी कर सकती हूँ. They are our heroes. The social battles that go on 24/7 are very essential to the work we do. And while we have made much progress, we continue to struggle to ensure that every family is a healthy family, every child is a wanted child, every woman has access to family planning services of her choice with quality. Every woman has the right to decide when she gets married, and every woman leads a life without any form of violence, whether it's mental, physical violence or social violence. And so how best do we understand the dilemmas and difficulties of those battling this in their homes and in their daily lives? The hunt for a strategy or which could be most effective in the battle against regressive social norms and attitudes led to the idea of Makbaksh, and that was 6 long years ago. However, we all know that a TV serial on its own cannot be enough, and so मैं कुछ भी कर सकती हूँ was developed into a 360-degree entertainment education approach, and I'm delighted that Dr. Ajay Chowdhury is here, who really encouraged us and enabled us to do this and introduced us to, I first want to, amongst all that you see on this slide, Dr. Chaudhary introduced us to something he co-created with Gramvani, where we use the IVRS, the Integrated Voice Response approach. And the IVRS we describe as the Facebook of the poor when we describe it to people. For those who don't know IVRS, the formative research, Arvind Singhal, who has been such a part of Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti, who introduced us to the positive deviance approach and the marker approach, which you will hear later. But the positive deviance approach is the case studies that he led in documenting with a range of people in India, which is at the heart of the story of Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon. And the evaluations from season 1, we are into season 3, as I said, has been independent evaluation. Agencies have worked with us and they've all become partners. The new addition I want to mention first, which is the artificial intelligence powered chatbot, which we collaborated with AI for Good. The approach has been to have within the Facebook page of Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon AI Sneha with over 6 million reach. Digital media, you cannot not be on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram today, and we are also on Hotstar. The first 2 seasons, the digital you will find on Hotstar. Community outreach, partnering with NGOs, as well as community radios. We had close to 500 Sneha clubs of women who mobilized around Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon, their communities, and we had many celebrities joining us. We mentioned Farhan Akhtar, Shabana Sohan, Sharmila, but there are all the leading film not all, 10 of the leading film actors in India and singers have supported and are promoting Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon. And the mass media, of course, the TV, the Doordarshan, which is India's public broadcasting television, gave us free screening and 12 languages. They dubbed us into across 50 countries, and we were on their radio, All India Radio, 216 radio stations. And finally, but the most important, we have a great creative concept and a great creative director in Feroz Abbas Khan, who has joined us. I'm not giving you figures from the evaluation. I'm only giving you primarily viewership. We had a total recorded viewership of 46 million as per the numbers we received, but the numbers that Doordarshan and Prasar Bharati tweets is more than 200 million cumulated over reach in India. We had 2.2 million IVRS calls from across India. The hashtag Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon had almost 895 million reach and 19 million episodes on YouTube. AI Sneha, a safe, non-judgmental space for young people, especially when they have mainly access to misinformation, had access to confidential, safe information. And in 1 year, as I said earlier, the chatbot not only reached 6 million, but 1.3 million conversations happened. Now, a unique feature of this program has been evaluation team. The evaluation team is, we've had two approaches to evaluation, and at a later point, we will plan with BMGF to do the presentation of some of the research which has been finalized, the evaluation, and we will share. But today we're sharing a very interesting approach that's different, that is led by Professor Arvind Singhal with Dr. Helen Wong, Rue Latkenhorst, and Martin. I want to say it's also very special that one of our colleagues here, Rue, ended up focusing one whole chapter in his PhD thesis on Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon, and that's why the others are all doctors. And he's going to be a doctor in a few months, and we think we'll make history being part of his PhD thesis. They will be presenting the findings from a concurrent monitoring of season 3 across platforms using markers as tools. And now, of course, starts are learning from the social behavior change communication field. Have we really made a difference? They are going to share with us candidly. And before that, I want to say that the first 26 episodes of season 3 were on sanitation, Swachhata, at the invitation of the Ministry of Water and Sanitation to complement India's campaign to end open defecation. We faced a challenge in introducing, Swachhata along with reproductive health, sexual rights. And so what we did was, the common thread, of course, was women's empowerment. And the reason the government did come to us is because they recognized without empowering women and women's participation, you cannot have a Swachh Bharat. You cannot end open defecation. So by placing gender at the heart of our approach to sanitation, we were able to easily dovetail the first 26 episodes with the second set of episodes, which focused on women's reproductive and sexual health and family planning. And for both sanitation and contraception, our aim was to transform issues which are normally considered problematic, child marriage, which is considered a problem for us, a solution by the community. But the way we did it was we considered taboos and unspoken issues into healthy, positive decisions within the community. We tried to make sanitation as well as contraception desirable, using words like must bandi. Must was a very, very popular word in all the markers. No, I'm not going to give away any more of that, Dr. Singhal. Don't worry. And now let me hand over to Professor Arvind Singhal, but I'm not going to do that, Arvind Singhal, without a very short story which you have made all of us become storytellers. You've sort of helped us. I want to tell you a story where I'd met Arvind Singhal only 2 times for 5 minutes in India over 15 years. And I called him when we thought of the idea of Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti. We didn't have a name. And I said, Feroz Khan is on board and PFI would like to meet with you, talk to you, learn, because there is no program across the world that Professor Singhal hasn't been associated in behavior change and entertainment education. And I want to end the story by the line he said, and he flew the talk. He said, I will come to India, desh ke liye kuch bhi kar sakta hu. I'll do anything for India. And he was on a plane very soon, and he hasn't stopped coming on a plane to be with us. So we have a popular program, Walk the Talk. He flies the talk. So over to you to fly the talk today to all of us.
Thank you, Poonam, for introducing Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon, and also that story. I think we all know who know Poonam that if Poonam gets you into her orbit, you stay there and you happily stay there. And it's an honor in some ways. Poonam, I think we first met about 20 years ago when you had invited me to your MacArthur offices in New Delhi, and then 10 years went by, and then you were at PFI, and we joined hands again. So I just want to say I'm deeply honored, both personally and professionally, to have played a small role in this enterprise. The majority of the burden has been carried, as we know, by PFI under Poonam's leadership and by Firoz Abbas Khan and his creative team. मैं कुछ भी कर सकती हूँ. The story of Dr. Sneha Mathur, whom you see across 3 seasons, 182 episodes, successful medical doctor who leaves her lucrative practice, comes back to her home community in the fictional village of Pratappur after her sister dies in a forced abortion, a botched abortion, because her husband wanted a male child, and this was the 3rd abortion. And then, of course, she stays on and takes on all kinds of regressive norms. Let me introduce you to my wonderful dream team. Rue on the left, whom you'd hear from, Helen after that. You see me and you see my Dutch sister Martine. We represent 4 different institutions, education and otherwise. And I think we can say that our work together, along with other partners, has been one which we can call not just a collaborative research journey, but also a research journey on a bicycle. We do feel that, and I have felt for a very long time, that most of the research evaluations, even the ones that I have been part of, most researchers fly blind. And that sometimes is necessary because you want to be independent. But one of the lessons from the Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon project has been, and of course you will not see it in results in terms of our beta coefficients or anything like that, but the power and value of a research process comes through with collaboration. And there's really, I'm a strong believer that there's no meaningful research without trusting and collaborative relationships. There's too many Cadillac research designs with lots of trailing zeros in budgets. I think we did a very lean and mean evaluation, and that's the reason why I call it a bicycle evaluation. It was very adaptable. We could stop and adapt and go. And also, many times these Cadillac research evaluations, and again, I put myself in the picture, are often done in very resource-poor settings. And we tried very hard to do our work, on foot and on the bicycle, with the explicit purpose of also building capacity. Given that most evaluations are fairly extractive, we were very mindful of working with students across multiple institutions. Many of those students and our faculty colleagues, whether it's MICA or Lady Irwin College or Institute of Home Economics and so many others, they are here. I have a sense that we may have worked over the 3 seasons with 40 or 50 young graduate students. And I'm not sure how far we have succeeded in terms of outcomes or results, but we certainly, I think, have succeeded in terms of these trusting and collaborative relationships. So a personal journey, and I'll now move through things rather quickly. Today is July 7th, 2020, and why am I saying it out loud? Because exactly 36 years ago, on July 7th, 1984, a television soap opera around the same time went on the air on Doordarshan. And its name was Hum Log. Some of you know that Hum Log ended up being a part of my doctoral dissertation research. So I don't know if we could have planned this better in terms of a date that 36 years later we are here and we are talking about Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon. My data source for the Hum Log research project was Abhinav Chaturvedi. The first time we met, we realized we were wearing similar clothes. We got along fabulously. I'm happy to say Abhinav is on this call and he's listening in. So it's as much a journey for him as it is for me. And now, of course, showing you these trusting and collaborative relationships. And I wouldn't say much except, say it's a co-learning journey. Here you've got 5 partners represented. Ideation workshop, we all look very happy. A very supportive journey. There are 9 institutions and 15 people represented. And here we are trying something very playful. Talking about research and adaptive research on the balcony of the Center for Media Studies, who were very instrumental in us being adaptive and experimental, field research partners. On the ground, we had partners who were priming the ground and also problem solving. So thank you to Shramik Bharti and Waqt Ki Awaaz in Kanpur Dehat, and our formative research partners, the Sahgal Foundation and Alfaz Mebat. I know they are represented on this call. And of course, a positively deviant journey as we played Pachisi at Fatehpur Sikri, where we were playing a little more than just Pachisi. We were planning how to move forward. These were our formative research implementers, the change designers, and they are on the call. It is also important that we put this journey of ours in a historical conceptual frame. I don't know how many of you recognize this guy, but he was born 212 years ago in Victorian England. He's Mr. Dickens. And Mr. Dickens is very relevant to our discussion today. Why? Because he is the most popular storyteller and novelist of all times. His books have never been out of print, whether it's Pickwick Papers to Oliver Twist to David Copperfield to Great Expectations. Mr. Dickens has been around. And interestingly, how we read Dickens today as a novel is not how Dickens wrote. Dickens wrote in installments, in serials. He's the one who pioneered the notion of serial writing. So Pickwick Papers was first offered in 19 installments. Great Expectations was offered in 36 installments over a period of a year. And you can imagine people waited for it, week after week. Oh, what's going to happen next? And his characters were believable, with names such as Scrooge and Mr. Twist or Oliver Twist. His stories were about oppression of the poor. He and Karl Marx were contemporaries. They both lived in London at the same time. And if Marx's Communist Manifesto was an intellectual treatise, Dickens was doing exactly that in the fictional sphere. In fact, Marx thought that Dickens spoke the social and political truths as no other. He was a master of creating new language, contributed 250 words to the English language, including words like fluffy and words like butterfingers, words like dustbin, and words like boredom. Cliffhanging conversations, because week after week people listen to what they discussed and debated the storylines, and there were performative renderings in different parts of England of his weekly offerings. And of course, he is the precursor to our notion of fandom. because Dickens often had multiple projects going at the same time in different installments. And if one of the projects didn't have a good circulation, he dropped it and continued with the ones that. So if you're looking at TRPs or ratings or fandom, because he had readers and he had fans and he had super fans, and binge watching, because ultimately once the installments were over, they were put together in the form of a book, and now you could binge read. So you can see there are many parallels here from something that happened over 180 years ago to what we are doing here. His journey has been a theoretical journey, a conceptual journey. So Poonam, I pulled this out because 8 years ago, after we first met, on your invitation and as a labor of love, I wrote this creative brief for PFI, 44 single-space pages. It was all that I had learned about entertainment education until that date. And we are all looking a little younger there 8 years ago. It has been a narratological journey. I can't even pronounce that word, but in essence, we were drawing upon, and this is from the brief, we were drawing upon the notion from G.K. Chesterton, who said, fairy tales are more than true. Not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten. And herein lies the power of narrative fiction, that stories can take us to places where we've not been, and stories can tell us how to vanquish social monsters. It's been a measurement journey, and Poonam talked about markers. This also is from that creative brief. I went back to it and underlined a few things. I have been thinking about markers for the past 22 years. My first book with Everett Rogers, I think Corinne Scheffner-Rogers, his wife, is on the call, talked about the potential value of markers for both plot design as well as from a research perspective. And I'd be very interested in what Victor has to say about this. So what are markers? Well, before that, research is always messy. The biggest problem we have is how do we attribute the effects of a particular intervention? How do we say that this independent variable is causing these, outcome, is affecting these outcome variables? So research is very messy. It's hard to parcel things out. Also, many people describe the research process as being attending a funeral, a cremation. So much goes in, a whole body, a whole life, and so little comes out. And I think that's quite true. So our thinking was, how can we make Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon count? So we said, let's try to plot markers. What are markers? Markers are distinctive plot elements which mark a desirable shift and that are uniquely attributable to a program. And the way you do it is by rescripting language. Like you go from nasbandi, which is vasectomy, closing of pipes, to mastbandi, which is pleasurable closure. So you are rescripting language, you're rescripting concept, and of course, in the tradition of Charles Dickens, you also rename characters in ways that they become. And you'll see how that magic happened with Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti and the brilliance and the creative genius, I think, of Feroz Bhai. So you cannot do markers if you cannot dance, if the turtles cannot dance with the peacocks. No, so I'm considering myself to be a toad, a turtle, slow, stodgy, always saying, no, you can't do this. And then, of course, the creative process. Being on stage and doing it well and doing it at scale. And this is Martine's book, her doctoral dissertation, of which I was a committee member, The Turtle and the Peacocks. And if you can have the turtles and the peacocks dance, and respectfully and deeply, then maybe you've got some magic. So I'll just say that Feroz indulged me with being a turtle, and it was his grace that allowed us to do a dance so that we could have some markers. Before I hand it to Helen to talk about markers, let me just give you a slate of the kind of markers Feroz introduced. Not I, but Feroz. Not we, but Feroz introduced, because he was the person solely responsible for the scripts. We were just feeding him stories, hoping that some of these would stick, and many stuck. So I'm just going to talk about the family planning markers in Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon Season 3. Must, the word must means pleasure. We began with Panna talking about her mast pitara, which is a pleasure basket, a basket of contraceptive choices, if you may. She talks about a must topi in a different episode, a pleasure hat, which is a condom. She talks about a must goli, a pleasure pill. In another episode, we begin to talk about must bandi, as the wrestler talks about how having a vasectomy has a pleasure, so that's a pleasure snip snip. And in addition to these, Feroz beautifully introduced multiple times the notion of the lambi sagai, which basically means long engagement, which, as you know, basically means delaying your marriage, which I think is important in the context of family planning. And the context in the social media circles of Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon, the notion of lamba honeymoon, which basically means delay your first child. So this is a beautiful basket of contraceptive choices, new language, reframing language. And now this, of course, allows you to track whether or not, if there is uptake, you can say that this uptake has been as a result of Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon. Hoping that a lot goes in and maybe a little something comes out. Creation of characters. This is again Feroz's brilliance. Condom Baba, an evangelist for condoms, but he's a trained medical doctor. Dimpa Rani, who is, of course, promoting Dimpas or injectables. So this is our slate. And now I hand it over to my friend and colleague, Helen. Helen got her PhD from the same institution that I did, the USC Annenberg School, 20 years after I did, which means she's 20 times smarter, not more. And it's an absolute joy to have the opportunity to work with her. So over to you, Helen.
This was a really fabulous setup. Thank you, Arvind. And so I really appreciate this opportunity for our global research team to share a little bit of our design, which is a mixed method approach, and some of the top line results. Now, I want to start by asking this question: why mixed methods? Now, I'm sure everyone here on the call has heard of the famous Indian fable about the six blind men and the elephant. And you'll probably agree with me that the takeaway point from this story is that a single perspective is too limited to understand the bigger picture. So let's dig a little deeper. What about the elephant? So stories in the old days, like the Pickwick Papers example that Arvind mentioned earlier, come in paperback and everyone reads the same story. Now, if you were to use the elephant to represent the modern day social and behavioral change communication initiatives, we know we rarely rely on one medium and have one plot. For example, we could say, using the example of Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon, the body of this elephant is the dramatic serial on TV and radio. The big ears are the IVRS, engaging the audience, listening to and amplifying their voice. And the elephant trunk can be maybe the chatbots, reaching out to the young people online, on social media. Each of these narrative elements is important to the overall experience for the audience, but each alone could not make up the whole story. Now, what if we're not blind? Markers as Arvind explained, are at the core of the pro-social and health messaging. These new terms and new symbols, be it textual, audio, visual, or multimodal, present the most important element in the narrative experience to optimize the desired change. By working closely with the creators of the program, the dedicated PFI team, and the creative genius, Firoz, our research team was able to keep the laser focus on the prize, quote unquote, the prize, throughout the project. So here is a little overview of the mixed methods evaluation of Kuch, Sakti, Hoon, season 3, The Elephant. So PFI and Graham Vanny have pioneered the use of IVRS for large-scale audience engagement in real time since season 1. And Arvind and I helped analyze some of the data in the first 2 seasons and published the results in 2018. This time around, we leveraged what worked well before and also added a few things I'll point out in a minute. We also conducted a field experiment with repeated measures to allow comparisons between viewers and non-viewers and track the same people over time. We also tried to keep the questions as comparable as possible between IVRS and the field research. Now, in addition, we applied and adapted the Galileo cognitive mapping tools both on IVRS and in the field experiment. Even though Galileo has been around for over 40 years, and applied in many disciplines in many countries, this was the first time it was used for SBCC program evaluation, and also the first time in India. Our Dutch colleagues led the digital tracking on various platforms, which Roel will share in a bit. So basically, we had analog and digital data, examined quantitative patterns and qualitative insights, used the conventional survey and experimental methodologies, and complemented them with the innovative Galileo model, as well as unobtrusive observation. Of course, the common threads here across all these methodologies we've used and platforms are the markers. So I'm really honored to be part of this global research team, and we're grateful to all the partners and collaborators, and very proud of this research design we came up with the resources and support available at the time. Now, in the interest of time today, let me share a few interesting findings. Arvind just mentioned about fandom, talking about Dickens in the earlier days. Now, Poonam in her introduction mentioned the viewership of a very conservative estimate of 46 million of Kuch, Sakti, Hoon across all 3 seasons. And we know from our analysis that across all seasons, there were over 2 million IVRS calls and close to 500,000 in season 3. Now, the most important and interesting number here is the phone numbers that called during season 3 had 73% overlap with phone numbers from the previous seasons. So despite the 3-year gap between season 2 and season 3. So imagine there's so many options, for people to choose. And this many people follow the show, called in, and some more than once, multiple times. And I called these people super fans because we have some thousands of them called on average more than a month, every month, during the broadcast. And from those who shared their demographic information with us, we've learned that the gender distribution is about 50-50 between male and female, and they're mostly youth and young adults. And this was very consistent across all 3 seasons. Now, what I'm showing you on the screen is a map. This is basically a visualization of the geographic spread of the IVRS callers who shared their geographic location with us, and our partner Graham Vanny used the speech-to-text technology to help us extract the information. And of course, you can tell, but at first glance, we have callers basically calling from different locations all across India, different states. Now, where the states with darker shades means there were more calls. And you can tell the top 5 states with the most calls are those in the north. And where we have actually isolated and highlighted with the blue bubbles, those I would call them like the hot spots at the district level. And as Arvind told me, the top 4 out of the 5 states are what you would know as the Bimaru states. And so these are the states where you have high population growth rates, poor economic conditions, and very often are the target geographic locations for campaigns and initiatives related to health and social issues. And you can also tell Kanpur Dehat district of UP state is where we conducted the field experiment, and there's no bubble there, so it's actually ideal choice for us where we could set up to have viewer versus non-viewer groups for comparisons. Arvind set up and introduced some of the main characters, so I wanted to go over a few things in terms of how the audience responded to these characters. Now, of course, our protagonist across all seasons is Dr. Sneha, and she might be on the call with us today, right? And what we know is that the viewers really enjoyed the program overall, and they felt that they were transported into the story world of Kuch Sakti. And I've converted all the different scales into 100 points in terms of the ratings. So they gave 94 out of 100 for season 3 overall. You know, same thing for program enjoyment, and 85 for the narrative transportation. And so Dr. Sneha, you know, she introduces the issues, and she's a role model for the audience. And in season 3, she also delivered the epilogue, breaking the fourth wall, as someone might call it. And so the audience felt that they could see Dr. Sneha as not only a role model, but a friend they could trust and talk to. So this is like the seemingly interpersonal communication between the audience and the media figure, and something the media scholars would call parasocial interaction. And also, male viewers in particular really wanted to meet her in person. Well, I can't blame them. Can you? So you can tell why it's really had the appeal to male viewers. In season 3, we introduced a new main character, Panna. And so she became a mentee of Dr. Sneha and an ASHA health worker in the village. And there was actually a community radio station that was very instrumental in terms of having different guests and introducing, well, here what you're seeing is Panna introducing the marker Maspitara. And of course, everybody loved Panna. And as Arvind mentioned, through her, she introduced these the master suite markers, and had different guests to talk about Lambi Sagai, Lambi honeymoon, and then have people calling in like the champion wrestler and other characters like Kandam Baba and Dimpa Rani. So overall, the audience really viewed Panna as a very strong, brave young woman, and also a trustworthy friend they could talk to as an ASHA worker. Well done. And same markers. What I'm showing you here is the bar chart in terms of the marker recognition rates, and you can tell that it's overall very, very high. In the field research. And all above 90, and for some of them almost close to 100%. And so Lambi Sagai, right, was repeated among different characters, different couples. Here the examples I'm using would be between Panna and her fiance Samir. And what we've learned from the field experiment with repeated measures on this notion of Lambi Sagai is that the viewers perceived the importance for a girl to delay marriage until she finishes education and starts earning was significantly higher than non-viewers, and also grew over time. So it's a kind of an ideal result. And also, you might remember this new character, Dimbarani, and the audience also really liked her, even though she was introduced much later in the season. And our field research in Kampur Dehat showed 26% increased awareness of injectables among viewers as opposed to 10% among non-viewers. And the audience really felt that this character caught their attention, and they learned a lot from her, and she was a credible source in terms of the information about injectables. So Condom Baba, also very popular. And of course, condom was promoted not just through this new character, but of many different ways. So Mas Topi, through Panna, in her Mas Pitara, this pleasure box. There was also a condom rap, condom bully, and a music performance. So there were multiple ways to talk about condoms and promote it. And our IVR's survey respondents showed 6% increase in self-reported condom use among married male viewers. The champion wrestler was also very popular. And so Nas Dundee versus Mas Dundee, positive framing in terms of the marker. And so our IVR's survey respondents showed 10% increase in self-reported adoption of vasectomy among married male viewers. Now moving on to probably the least familiar part for you is the Galileo cognitive mapping. And this is a lot. I'm not going to go into detail. And I know I'm going to give a big shout out to Dr. Joseph Wolfel, my senior colleague and mentor here in Buffalo, who's been so gracious and generous guiding us through this project in terms of the application and adaptation. All I want to say here is that Galileo has a body of literature that's very well documented. It's been applied and it's been very effective in many different ways for very precise measurement, and it's based on has a theory and measurement model. And we've learned a lot in the process of applying it in the Makrishpikar Sakti Hoon project. So it's not possible for something like, we would typically take a course or a year to explain, to kind of squeeze in a few minutes. But I want to give you just a little bit taste of it. So I'll give you one very simple example. Now, if you could close your eyes, what I will do is I will read you a short description of a room. And I want you to picture what this room would look like. You ready? Yeah. I have a very small bedroom with a window overlooking the heath. There's a single bed against the wall, and opposite it, a gas fire with a gas ring for boiling a kettle. The room is so small that I sit on the bed to cook. The only other furniture in the room is a bookcase in one side of the gas fire next to the window. It's got all my books on it and my portable radio and a wardrobe. It stands against the wall just near to the door, which opens almost directly onto the head of my bed. Now, if each of you were to draw this room, describe to you, we would probably come up with 146 versions of the room. And it's very likely none of the single drawing would be accurate. Now, what I'm showing you is a recreated illustration using the Galileo model with aggregated measurements for everybody, as a group, to be able to have a precise description of and reflection of the description of this room. So it's projected onto a three-dimensional space, so you can look at the relative position from all these objects. Okay, so how do we apply it to Makrishpikar Sakti Hoon? Now, about halfway through season 3, we introduced a marker called Gugagugi. So what you're seeing is some screenshots here. That's a really fun device, and it can talk. It's like an Alexa-like device, intelligent, it's fun, you can ask questions. And Hanna's fiance Samir wanted to install it all across the village. This was just right after the introduction of this marker, the sanitation marker Guga Gugi, we were able to get some measurement between the viewer group and the non-viewer group, and then measured again at the end of season 3. So what you're looking at is this Galileo visualization. I want you to focus on the orange lines that represent, I'm highlighting the distance between the marker Guga Gugi and regular toilet use, and Guga Gugi and open defecation. And then if you look at the gray lines, I highlighted here, those represent the non-viewer group. So in this case, right after the introduction of the marker Guga Gugi, what we found out was, the perceived distance between the marker Guga Gugi was much closer to regular toilet use and much further away from open defecation for viewers as compared to non-viewers. And we also know at the end of the season when we measured it again, and all of these concepts moved in the desired direction. So in essence, for those of you who don't have the research background, what we've learned from the field experiment is that viewers understood this marker was used to promote regular toilet use and reduce open defecation. Oh, and since we're talking about open defecation, I also wanted to mention that we had 2 special musical performances in season 3. And I mentioned the condom bully just now. And here we have the sanitation Kawali. And I've been told the melody is very familiar to everyone in India, except this time we have the new lyrics. And the majority of the viewers could recognize the Kawali, and they really loved it. They really enjoyed this performance. So I'm going to end here and hand it over to Roel.
So I'm Roel, I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm about to finish my PhD project at the Erasmus University and the Center for Media and Health in Gouda. And in 2018, I was lucky enough to get involved in Kuch Sakti Hoon and write a chapter about it in my dissertation that I will defend later this year in October. And this was truly a great experience where I believe that we learned a lot. And I just want to thank PFI for bringing all these people together and making this happen. I really appreciate it. I think that we learned a lot because of our unique bicycle approach, or as I'd like to call it, digital action research. During the season, we iterated through 11 cycles of research, media strategy, and media creation to continuously improve social media formats and build a relation with our audiences. And this would never have been possible with the amazing work of PFI's social media team. So I want to point out some of you specifically: Nikita, Urvashi, Abhijit, Tanushri, and all the others that worked so hard on the marker matrices, media strategies, and content formats that made this possible. With your efforts, you really made a very important contribution to this research. But what did we learn? I think this visual neatly summarizes it, but it's a pretty dense graph, right? So don't worry, it's impossible to get into the details today, but instead I'll just try to give a little taste of it. For those who are interested, the reports and the executive summaries are available, and I'd be happy to discuss it in more detail later. But let's get on with it. First, let me take you back to the late 90s, early 2000s, when Google looked like this. The internet was relatively new. There was no Facebook, there was no YouTube, but there was no organization that would deny internet's premise. And in these early days, I just started taking my first steps on the internet. Traditional organizations such as newspapers and advertisers, they took the mass media model, the model they're so accustomed to, where they will send information to large groups of passive audiences. They took that model to the internet. Online, they basically did the same. They sent information in order to reach as many people as possible. But in the new media landscape, audiences play a way more active role in spreading information. They like, they share, they comment, they even create content themselves. So in Kuch Sakti Hoon 3, we asked ourselves the question, how can we involve audiences in spreading new ideas? How can we invite them to share their perspective And how can we stimulate meaningful media engagement around all these topics? Markers played an essential role in this quest, and Arvind just told us why. Markers are unique words that represent an ideal future. I have a background in advertising, and to me this seems very similar to what we advertisers do with brand names or brand logos. We create a simple shape or word that represents a specific promise. And for Main Kuch Bikar Sakti Hoon 3, we've played with the idea of a visual marker. And in the next few slides, I will draw from some cultural phenomena from over the past few years to get to the gist of it. So, who remembers the Livestrong band? This simple yellow wristband to show your solidarity with cancer patients. It's similar to the pink ribbon or the HIV ribbon, and you may remember how it was slowly taken up. First, you see that one odd colleague wearing one and you have no idea what it is. The next day you get on the bus, you see more people wearing those bracelets, until one day you wake up and everybody has a bracelet on, out of solidarity with suffering cancer patients. And in Main Kuch Bikar Sakti Hoon 3, we've tried to find an online equivalent, the Facebook frame. This is a simple visual effect that you can apply onto your profile picture, so that you show all your friends with each interaction you make on the platform that you endorse on the idea of Lambi Sagai. So here on the left, we see Lambi Sagai in the context of the romance between protagonists Sneha and Arjun that has been developing already for over 3 years. But of course, during the 3rd season, it was all about the romance between Panna and Samir. With the frame, what we basically did online on social media, we afforded audiences to share their Lambi Sagai story. So in addition to these romances on televised drama, hundreds of fans endorsed on the idea, framing their relationship as a Lambi Sagai engagement, complementing it with their stories about how they met, how they overcame struggle, and how they live happily ever after. Another example is the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Who remembers this? From celebrities to regular people, in 2014, millions of people participated in the challenge, where they threw buckets of icy water onto their heads. And my favorite one is this one with Bill Gates, where he puts up a gantry on his spear to participate. He had just been nominated by Mark Zuckerberg, his colleague from Facebook, and nominates a few others himself. And I think that this nomination mechanism, where he specifically calls out people he knows and challenges them to participate as well, led to exponential growth. So what does this have to do with Main Kuch Bikar Sakti Hoon? Well, it only has to do something with entertainment education if we can make it meaningful. And what very little people know is that there is meaning behind the action of dumping icy water onto your head as well. It freezes your muscles for a second. And for a brief moment, you experience what it is to have a muscle disease like ALS. In Main Kuch Bikar Sakti Hoon, we also try to incorporate a challenge, something similar. And this ultimately led to the Condom Bole challenge, where we asked audiences to share their dance on the Condom Bole rap song that Helen just talked about. This song was released on World Population Day on the 11th of July and would also feature in the TV series a few weeks later. Audiences were invited to share their own dance, their own interpretation of the song on Instagram and TikTok. We received a few. And I think we can learn from this. Because first of all, I think timing is really of the essence. This rather complicated graph shows that we have received a peak of comments for Lambi Sagai exactly in the weekend when the romance between Panna and Samir unfolded on television. And although Condom Bole did result in elevated organic reach that you can see in the middle graph, and did result in many external websites and blogs referring to the video, which you can see in the bottom graph, it did not really lead to many comments or meaningful conversations about whether you should use a condom or not. Secondly, there was no clear nomination mechanism in place like there was in the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. And third, the dance, I think, was rather complicated. I mean, I have very little talent for dance, I have to admit. But when I saw the video, I thought there is no chance I will ever be able to dance the Condombole. And if we look at the responses that we got, then you can also see that at least half of these responses were sent by professional or at least semi-professional dancers. I was really amazed by their skill. So here we can also draw inspiration from cultural phenomena from the past. Think of the Macarena. Who doesn't know the Macarena? Think of the Gangnam Style, or a bit more recent, the Fortnite Floss. These are really simple dances that audiences can join instantly. And we know, of course, that with the power of storytelling, we can frame this dance in order for it to be meaningful. Thank you. That was my contribution.
I invite Martine for a minute, our team member from the Center for Media and Health, to provide a very brief summary. Martine is a entertainment education scholar of global repute and a practitioner too.
Yes, well, thanks for the invitation and to listen to these contributions. And hello, everybody in the audience. It's wonderful to know that you are there. What we learned from this collaborative effort, I think, is that innovation is key. If we want to grow in our field of entertainment education, and we talk about entertainment with an added value, then it's always important to create an extra mile, to try out things and to innovate. And to innovate means that you have to have an open mind and to learn. And I think in this collaborative project, we have seen that everybody on the team from all kind of backgrounds have really tried to make this extra mile. So we could learn from each other, but also we can share the lessons learned, the do's and don'ts, again, to our students and to other practitioners. So what I think is very important in this case is that we have not only learned from new research methodologies, but also from new collaborative partnerships. It's not only the health communicators and the creative professionals, but also the social media team members, the social influencers, the people who are involved in the marketing, and different levels of researchers in the field and in other ways. So to conclude, I think it's really interesting if all of us, where we are, in which continent we live, we try to let the field of entertainment education and social and behavioral change grow by experimenting, continuing collaborative partnerships of all levels, and to share the lessons that we have learned. And at least we as a team, all of us, would like to share the lessons that we have learned as part also of this collaborative journey.
Thank you. Thank you to all the four panelists. And PFI has always believed that a close collaboration between the producer and the evaluators was critical to ensuring that the serial was adaptive, entertaining, and spoke to the intended audience. The use of markers to rescript and reframe social norms, integrating the chatbot into the serial and leveraging the Galileo model all have clearly provided rich learnings for entertainment education initiatives. And I hope that goes for not just us, but around the world. And now I'm going to quickly move to our four discussants. I'm going to first invite Victor Hugo Oliveira, who is an economist at the World Bank and leads the Impact Evaluation DIME, which is a department within the bank. And his research focuses on mechanism to promote change. And he has wonderfully evaluated another program of PFIs, which is again directed by Feroz Sakti Adalat, and we will be having a webinar soon there's a policy brief that Victor has developed, and we will be inviting all of you back to join us, Victor. But today I have a quick question of you, which is as an independent evaluator, so what are the learnings from the evaluation and the findings we heard today of season 3 Magbaksh?
Great. Thanks, Poon. Yes, Poon, and thank you for the invitation. Always a pleasure to see how you bring the top talent in terms of researchers, edutainment producers, and work together in these case studies and this that inspired, both researchers and policymakers. So let me just start by also saying I'm a big fan of Arvind and Helen's research from their transmedia and edutainment mechanisms. And now you did it again with your chatbot, Galileo mapping, and social media markers. I very much like what you were saying, Arvind, earlier about the importance about mixed methods, adapting, building capacity, and doing all this at a low cost. I also like this mixed method methodology where you're triangulating different data sources, IVRs, face-to-face surveys, social media metrics, right? Enriches the analysis, enriches the conclusions, right? On the field experiment, the research takes several steps to address self-selection issues, reporting bias, right? And issues remain, of course. There's always this trade-off between evaluating an intervention in a more real-world setting, which you are doing, but that comes at a cost of cleaner estimates that a more controlled or in a lab setting can address better. I wonder if in this research, using placebo screenings could have helped further improve some of the selection issues, as well as reporting bias. For future research and building upon your markers and social media research, especially right now where COVID is imposing physical social interaction, I wonder if there's space to carry out a larger number of impact evaluations that test effectiveness for subgroups, so you can adapt some of this messaging for women, for men, for rural, urban populations through A/B testing. Also to test take-up strategies. I see in your report for when a Bollywood celebrity was engaged, there were 34,000 likes, but only 38 shares. And as we all know that when you receive something from your uncle, your aunt in WhatsApp, often that has a stronger influence that, the national guidelines do. So testing ways, not only about take-up, but also how to maximize social diffusion, right, in social networks. And that's related to my last point of maybe testing how to see the information, how to target these fans that are most connected, most influential in their local communities, virtual or real communities, to maximize the impact beyond the viewer, but at the community level. Again, thanks for inviting me, and Arvind, Helen, and team, great research.
Thank you, Victor. That's a great endorsement coming from you. I'm going to move to Archana Vyas. Archana is the Deputy Director of Communication at the India Country Office of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She leads the brand strategy, social and behavior change communication, media relations programs, and advocacy communication. And for PFI, she's been a great supporter and a friend and an advisor. It is wonderful, Archana, to have you here. And I have a question for you. Given your long-standing association with मैं कुछ भी कर सकती हूँ, may I request you to comment on the learnings from Magbaksh that we've just heard?
Sure, and thank you so much, Poonam, for having me. It's what can I say? This has been like a candy treat. It must have been my good day. So it is at the end of the day, it seems like a candy to be having such an enriching session. I remember coming to your office and once saying that at that point in time, Professor Arvind Singhal was there, Helen was there, your entire team was there, Firoz was there, and I said, hey, this is the dream team. It seems like the dream team has really come together to create some magic again. But I think for us at Gates Foundation, the issues of family planning are really important and critical. There are associated social norms as well, whether, it's been mentioned before, whether it's age at marriage, age at when you have your first child, sex selection. These are all normative issues, and I think over the two seasons, and we are fortunate to be associated with season 2 as well as season 3, in terms of making sure and through narratives, and this is mastery of Professor Singhal. He actually goes beyond narratives, and he actually talks about markers. As a behavior science enthusiast, it's amazing to see how while the geeky word is like markers work, and it is really about taking behaviors and making it really simple, easy to understand actions. That's what the magic is all about, right? We might track markers, but what you're doing simplistically is actually taking those, you're taking behaviors, and you're getting your viewers to imbibe those behaviors in the context that they understand. So that for me is really, really good, and there is a lot of theory around narratives, but on markers, there's theory as well, but it's theory that is being practiced and being implemented in these 2 seasons, which is absolutely phenomenal to see. And the second thing that I would say is, over the 2 seasons, what I've seen is very consistent in terms of research. There are 2 or 3 things that move in terms of as indicators. One is self-efficacy, especially when it comes to norms. It's really hard. You're giving people confidence to speak about issues of family planning. You're seeing that consistently over season 2 and season 3, how you're making women more empowered to be speaking about these issues. The second thing is, in terms of awareness and knowledge, those indicators move, which is great. And the third thing that I'd say is, even in terms of getting people to imbibe these behaviors, I think we are seeing these indicators, especially the Galileo research that Helen showed. It gives us confidence that there is movement there. So once again, I would say it's been a rich experience for me to see all the magic come together. The last one that I would say is, Firoz is amazing. I've never seen in my career as a communication person such a disciplined, creative person. He actually absorbs research. You don't see creative people like him. It's really, really fortunate to have Firoz on the team who would actually study the program, the research really well. But 2 thoughts that I would, since I have the privilege of having such a great community of believers of entertainment education, 2 things that I would say is that the community should improve on. It's not reading research enough. One is I'm seeing some research come forward in terms of the frequency of exposure, right? Because as a donor, what you want to do is also you're thinking about efficiency, right? In terms of how much to expose, right? So one of the areas, as we're doing multimedia and transmedia, multimedia, there is theory that's available that, as you get consistently messages across different media, it leads to, likelihood of taking on those behaviors. It improves the likelihood. But in terms of just the exposure, I would say that as community does more and more of research, we should be able to say how many episodes, right? How much. So I just think that there is that area of further research and inquiry that we should think about. The second thing is, moving forward, there's so much of media, and now so COVID time we are seeing television gain prominence once again. Research after research, we are seeing television is your main media for consumption, but you're also seeing WhatsApp, right? With plethora of media channels coming in, what should be that effective mix is second thing that I would say that I'm personally very keen, and Gates Foundation will be very keen as an investor and believer in entertainment education to know more on these two areas. So thank you so much, Poonam, for having us, and we stand together with you as community to learn more and hoping to improve people's lives with something that you are a partner on. Thank you so much, Poonam, for having me.
I'm coming to you, Priya, now. Priya Nanda is a senior program officer with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation at the India Country Office in the measurement, learning and evaluation team. Priya, you have done research yourself. You have funded, now you're monitoring research. I know you must have so much to say. But at this point, I'm going to ask you, especially since I'm sure you have so much to say, will you share with us the most striking takeaway from the presentation you've heard today and why? Priya, have I made life easy or more difficult for you?
No, actually, Archana made it easy because she said a few things that I would have liked to say. And firstly, I'd like to thank everybody on the creative and the technical design and research team that has been discussed today, and also all the participants, because I think this is part of this larger community that Kuch Sakti has created with the leadership of Poonam. I see people there, and I see the loyalty of the viewers of this seminar. I think what has been striking to me is really goes back to the basics, and I really appreciated Professor Singh's taking us back to different narrative methodologies of, and serialization of narratives, which it really struck me, that anxiety and anticipation of what's next, and there's a whole story and there's a whole serialization of story. And that really, and then it took us to Hum Log, which, by the way, is now being aired again on television, and my 90-year-old mother is watching it faithfully 37 years ago. So there's something, even though you know the story, there's still something that occupies you and pulls you back. And those characters and that context 37 years ago or 200 years ago is still relevant today. So there's something which struck me is that there's certain basic things, human nature, human behavior, that don't change. And we have the same range of emotions, in dance you have navras or 9 emotions in expression. And it's the permutation, combination of all of this that as a creative person, you're kind of using in storytelling. And I think what also struck me is the fact that our measurement really following that kind of essence of what the story is doing in terms of the credibility, the relevance, the emotional resonance. And what I found really interesting in this very pluralistic measurement agenda that created around Kuch Sakti, because the program itself is so creative in terms of using multiple media, so is the measurement. And I'm familiar with some that we are managing now at the Gates Foundation, and of course now the marker analysis, is that there is many methodologies and many things, and each method is telling us a different aspect of the story. Like the story that your colleague started with, the elephant and the 6 blind men. So it is something that, you actually have to step back and look at all of this together to really tell you something that we could learn for the future. So it is not just the immediate. The immediate effect could be on something very small, but overall, on the aggregate, are we creating a different narrative? Are our characters, are our storytellers really changing the discourse that we want to do? And I think the fact that so much of behavior change might be linked to changing the narrative and discourse, I think that still to me is the enigma. And I think all of what we are doing, including what you've discussed today through this webinar, is really trying to unpack and disentangle the enigma. I'd like to end, Poonam, because I know I had 3 minutes and I probably used all 3. is to say two things. One is that what I wanted to say, which is not about this question, what I've learned through this evaluation that I'm kind of looking at now, is that actually the viewer is a very sophisticated viewer who's actually traversing multiple medium at the same time. And in a way, what you have as an intervention designer is a fragmented market, because actually your viewer is traversing multiple media. So you want to get that precision around your viewer. Who is your target, and how do I know what they consume when, and how do they like to consume it? So actually, you don't have that precision a priori when you're designing. So there is a process of journey or iteration that is going to give you more understanding of and the dynamism of the context also. And then the measurement has to dance the same here, which means that it has to be all very adaptive in real time, which makes it very challenging. I think it's easy to say adaptive, real time, iterative design, but it's actually very challenging to put that in place, because even with Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon, the storyline, the shows have to be frozen at a particular time, and then different tactics evolve along the way, and different kinds of measurement agendas evolve. So I think that it is for me, what is important as a measurement person is you actually have a huge amount of data and a lot of creative energy and enterprise underlying each of these data sources and methodologies to put together a larger narrative in the story around how a show like this, or actually an enterprise of Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon, what do we really learn from it around norm and behavior change. So thank you, Poonam, for inviting me, and appreciate everybody's comments on this webinar. Thanks.
Thank you, Priya. It's always good to get your feedback, and to be continued. We are going to look at more research together very soon that you are leading on Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon. So thank you. And now this seminar, this webinar could easily have been on Feroz Abbas Khan. It's very clear from what you've heard, whether it is from the discussants or the speaker, the evaluators. And guess what? It is Arvind Singhal who gets the prize of asking a question from Feroz. That's my gift to you, right? Arvind, we agreed.
It is a gift, and Feroz Bhai, my question is preceded with a deep acknowledgement of the 8 years that we have known each other. I have to tell you, the first time I met Feroz Bhai was at Sanskruti. I was in Pakistan doing work. I had flown through Delhi for a day, and that's when we met. He had flown down from Bombay. And he had a thumbed copy of my book on entertainment education with him. And so you have Poonam and you have Feroz, and you know that there's going to be magic. So I was signed on right away. So it's been a journey, Feroz Bhai. Over to you. How do you, in some ways, see the fruits of your creative labor?
Okay, firstly, I must say that I am totally overwhelmed by whatever I've heard today, because I didn't know this is how it will finally turn up. I'm also very intrigued with the special effects on your hat, Dr. Singhal. It keeps coming and going out. So I thought that I'm learning something now in terms of narrative by watching you. So I would say that, to me, research is truth. And what you brought to me was truth, and what doing. So what I was trying to absorb the truth that you gave us, okay, and add the dramatic to it, add a bit of fiction to it, but stay within the truth. Because if you had not given us the initial formative research, if you had not told us about markers, if you hadn't told us the stories that are there about the
positive deviance, we would not have been in a position to do the kind of storytelling that we did. So I would say that it's very easy for us to, do stories and sort of create the fiction. But when we have to follow the truth and then create compelling stories, and they come from the reality of the ground, then that's where I think whatever has happened to Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon is because of what you gave to me. That's it.
Thank you, Feroz. I'm going to, I know that Arvind, you needed a minute, but I want to thank Feroz, and just 2 quick concluding comments. The liberty we asked for, an indulgence for 15 minutes, has become 15 into 2. That's the most non-scary way I can put it. So I'm going to conclude in a couple of minutes, but I will then give you the 1 minute that you asked for, we agreed upon at the end. So let me just say that the elephant, I was focusing on the elephant with its trunk high up roaring when I saw Helen's presentation, and yes, there you are. And to me that says a lot. And after that, what I heard about how the markers have worked, how 6% men in India, 6% men in the evaluation began to use condoms after seeing season 3. And for me, we're in a country where over 65 or 70 years, we've only been able to convince 6% men from using condoms, and a double increase to me is potential, and the elephant shrunk very high. All the new approaches that have been tried, and one thing that wasn't captured in the bicycle approach that was described was really Arvind Singhal first used the bicycle approach word when we realized we didn't have money. We had money for monitoring, but we had no money for evaluation. Professor Singhal said, no, we'll use the bicycle approach. We'll use very little money. How much do you have? And one of our board members who's present here had gifted us a very generous amount, but enough for a bicycle approach. And so that's how, this was labor of love. And when the report was sent to me by Arvind and colleagues, it said, here is a report with all our love. And I recognized it as labor of love. So thank you, all of you. And the success of entertainment education greatly depends on robust and evolving evaluation methodologies. I believe very strongly as much in that as much in entertainment education. And the centerpiece of our discussion today has been behavior change. We never imagined that this would be so topical globally today, given COVID-19. As India and the world braces up to learn to live with COVID-19, ensuring that behavior change, whether by way of wearing masks, ensuring physical distance, hand washing, is at the heart of the safety and well-being of the people. So the learnings from any behavior change communication are very important today. Going forward, COVID is going to live with us, but we're going to have a new norm in society. And I hope that this will contribute in some way, and the narratives and the markers and the, at low cost, using markers, using the Galileo approach, we can move somewhere. And I love the hunger that Archana introduced in, what is effective, and we want to learn more. There's enough data here and everywhere. And yes, the viewer is very sophisticated, but I would like to end with the viewer, because the viewer is clearly not only sophisticated, but is ready for change. The impact in season 1, 2, 3, and impact of many other programs is a reflection not just on Feroz's creative genius and PFI's work and all the advice we got from you, Arvind Singhal, the women of India, and even perhaps today giving me great hope, men of India too, 6% more if they use, more men use contraceptives because we are truly ready for a change. And it's really the people who viewed our serial and changed their thinking and behavior is what keeps us going. And I want to thank all of you. I want to thank my colleagues who helped all of us with this program, setting it up. And there are many of the team members, all of PFI is involved in Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon, and everybody gets involved when anything comes. It's our communication team, our knowledge management team, our family planning team. Everybody comes together. So I want to thank each of you who's on there, and our board, which is very biased and supportive of this program. And I'm very glad, Keshav, you're here. Keshav Desiraju, our chair, and Kiran Karnik, our chair of our executive committee. I want to, you're all partners and co-hosts, so I'm not going to thank Arvind, Roo, Helen, and Martin with the enthusiasm. Normally as guests I would, and I want to end here and thank you for indulging us and all the people who are with us, many friends and supporters. And I particularly want to say thank you to you, Shabana, who's been an absolute advocate and champion of Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon, for being with us today too. Arvind, the last word.
Thank you, Poonam. And again, greetings to everybody. As we sign off, how lovely to know Kiran Karnik is on the call. I hope Kiran will remember when I was maybe 19 or 20. He gave me a little place at the Development Education Communication Unit at the Space Application Center when I, inspired by Vikram Sarabhai's mission, wanted to learn a little bit about the role of satellite television in social change. I want to thank everybody and end with an invitation. One of the I think redeeming aspects of this platform, Zoom, is that we have a chat function. And I was wondering, as we sign off, if on behalf of the organizers, on behalf of those who have joined us, if I may invite you to go to chat if you can, and if you have the time, maybe take 30 seconds and type out if you have a question or a comment. This is our way of not just getting feedback, but also interactively hearing from you. And we love a chat waterfall. So if you are typing something, I ask you to not hit return. So I give you 30 seconds, and when I say hit return, if you can hit return at the same time, and then we can see the beautiful waterfall of all the questions and comments and insights. So 30 seconds of silence for those who can continue to join us, and I'll tell you when to hit return. We will save the chat, and also this is being recorded. We might edit it a little bit and share it with everybody.
Well, good night.
Okay, hit
and
return.
Thank you very much.
You can hit return now. Oh, look at this beautiful. Beautiful. And while this chat waterfall falls, I think we can say good morning here in El Paso, Texas, and good night from New Delhi, India. I will continue to be on this call. The call is formally, I think, ended. Thank you.